When I was in middle school, I was a part of a musical production of The Music Man. I was Anita, so my lines consisted of a couple smart remarks talking back to my parents, and a couple ye gods too, but I swear I was much better at it when I was 13. This was undoubtedly everyone's favorite time of the year. It was a huge extravaganza for a bunch of middle school students. Everything from the costume fittings to the choreography was so exciting for us. Despite the chaos of The Music Man, the moment that I remember most clearly during that winter is when my best friend Clara told me a secret. The secret was that she liked a boy whose name I will not mention because, well, it's a secret and I can't tell you. But the secret changed everything. Knowing this secret put past events into perspective. I understood things better. Why did she act like that? Why did she say those things? And why was she so angry with me when I danced with him at that bar mitzvah? It all made sense now. Everything was put into perspective, and I knew the secret. It was that she liked him. And I felt really good knowing this secret. I was a part of an exclusive group of people that she had handpicked. We were the only ones who knew, and that was the secret. But it also brought about this burdensome call to action. I almost had this responsibility to keep her secret hidden, if that was what she truly wanted, and to actually encourage her to let it out if that's what she wanted as well. Now, eventually she did make the first move after listening to Come Clean by Hilary Duff. It has that effect on people. But secrets, whether it's a personal secret of a lighthearted crush or a broader social secret of an injustice, has this very effect on its surroundings. Once told, it brings about a complex set of emotions. First, you feel enlightened. You're a part of a group. It fills in your most abiding gaps. It answers your most intricate questions with the truth. It completes a story. And then you experience this burdensome call to action. Many participants of social movements are participating in them because they are responding to this call to action. They have a responsibility to do something about this secret. Now today, I want to tell you my secret. One that I myself was not aware of for most of my life, and one that I generally hid until very recently. I'm undocumented. Now, what does this even mean? As defined by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, undocumented immigrants, or as they so graciously call us, illegal aliens, are foreign nationals who, one, entered the United States with fraudulent documents or without inspection, or two, entered the United States legally but subsequently violated the terms of their stay and remained in the United States without further authorization. Now, I fall into this latter category. My parents and I immigrated to the United States in 1997 when I was 2 years old. At this point, I could put together a few sentences in Korean, smart but short, enough to talk back to my parents, and my big girl molars were starting to grow in. My parents immigrated here for the same reasons that many parents do. It was for my education and for me. And in the meantime, perhaps, an opportunity to pursue the American dream. But their lives as immigrants were hard. Financial struggles and the mile-high language barrier paralyzed their optimism. Society's persistent and firm nudge to assimilate fully and seamlessly into American culture clashed with their ideals. They wanted to keep our Korean roots intact. As I got into elementary school, I felt the same burden that my parents had felt throughout their first years in the US. All my friends were confused about how my food smelled so bad but tasted so good. None of my teachers could pronounce my first name, Ta-eun, which is pronounced tonally within your throat. So I adapted. I adapted into an American culture that was rather casual relative to my very respective and formal Korean culture. And I code switched at appropriate times from Korean to American. And I had two identities. Now, this is the beginning of what I like to call the first-generation college student, first-generation immigrant, third culture kid struggle college admissions essay. You've probably heard it many times before. You've probably read some. I myself am guilty of writing a few too many. But the recurrence of this narrative actually tells us something extremely salient for our purposes. It actually tells us that the immigrant narrative has a huge impact on the ways that these identities are formed, and the recurrence of it tells you that this is really essentially what their lives are made of. Now, this immigrant narrative is the same for the 42 million foreign-born immigrants in the United States, and their 39 million US-born children. Now, these census numbers are huge, but they really don't account for the undocumented population. Today, there are 12 million undocumented immigrants in the United States of all ages, and 1.8 million of those immigrants are actually under the age of 18. Now, Congress has been gridlocked on the issue of immigration policy, so we haven't had much from them, but President Obama's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA, has allowed 800,000 undocumented immigrants to get deferred action. With it comes a social security number, work authorization, and a temporary deferral from deportation. Essentially, we're given a document that documents the fact that we are undocumented. How generous, right? But out of those 12 million, only 1.9 million of them are actually eligible for the program, which leaves the remaining 10 million unprotected and vulnerable. While I was one of the few who were lucky enough to fall under these rather arbitrary set of circumstances that gave me deferred action, many of my peers, my mentors, and my family members were not, leaving them in fear of deportation every single day of their lives. I was 16 when I found out that I was undocumented. I knew that we were different. I had always known. I was taught to be afraid of police, and I was taught to be quiet at airports, but I didn't exactly know why. On our daily hour-long commute to high school, my mom and I were talking about the excitement of college. My college acceptance letter was going to be the final "you made it" stamp on our immigrant story. It was going to be a sign that it had all been worth it. But my mom fell silent amidst this optimism, and she told me that I had to apply to college as an international student. And this made her really upset. I didn't know why I would ever be regarded as international. I was raised a Korean American. I was American to my core. But after she told me, she also said that she was sorry that she hadn't done her part as a parent. And this broke me. My mom was a supermom. Like many immigrant mothers, she worked hard without complaining. She took on the role of a single mother once my father became absent, and she did it really well. She kept me disciplined and focused, and she kept me grounded. But she also gave me an immense amount of love. But the love that she had given me had taken away from the love that she deserved for herself. It was indeed her decision to stay in the US after our visas expired, but it was never a decision she had to make, as I was a priority before herself, always and to this day. So I felt angry. Not at my mother, but at a system that made her believe that she was a bad parent. At a system that denied me my American identity, one that they had forced so forcefully onto us when we first arrived here. The world works in its satirical and ironic ways, and I spent my first freshman and sophomore years at American University. Studying in the School of International Service, I met my mentor, Dean Lewis Goodman. He was the first scholar that I had met that had a fascination with the small peninsula country of South Korea. With him, we discussed the culture, the traditions, and the people. We spent hours in his office talking about whether the cherry blossom trees outside were Korean or Japanese, which is a debate that will never end, so I'm not going to go there today. And we would also talk about my mother's extremely left-wing views on politics. You can ask her later, but I advise you not to. With Dean Goodman at AU, my identity as a Korean American was nurtured and affirmed. I was allowed to be both for the first time in my life. At the beginning of my junior year, I arrived at Georgetown, and it didn't take long for me to realize that I had arrived at home. I was immediately greeted by a cohort of students in the Georgetown Scholarship Program, an amazing group of students who were first-generation college students, low income, first-generation immigrants, just the best group of students, and most importantly, my mentor and friend, Queen. She was a rose that had grown out of the concrete, and with her growth, I blossomed. If my mother taught me how to love others, Queen taught me how to love myself. And watching her and her best friend, Stephanie, feel affirmed in their bodies and their identities changed my life and my perspective completely. Soon after, I was greeted by a group called Undocu-Hoyas, a group of undocumented Hoyas, united as one with the help of faculty and staff. There, I met Rio. Rio was an absolute ray of sunshine. He was a campus celebrity, and he put sriracha on absolutely everything he ate. I also met Clara. Clara was a devoted activist, one that rocked the teal-tipped hair better than anyone else I knew, better than any other Insta-famous blogger you see doing. And I also met Luis. Luis was a brilliant Jack and Cook scholar who looked absolutely sharp in a suit. No one can do it better than him. And together, we were unapologetically ourselves. We uplifted one another, and we empowered one another, and we were stronger together because we knew that a celebration of our identities was our form of resistance. Now, despite our collective empowerment, I would be lying to you if I said that there weren't days when we felt tired, when we simply felt exhausted by a never-ending fight. On these days, we would want to just go to a warm and safe place with our families where we can just be with one another without all these worries, where we wanted all the noise around us to just stop. Early in June, my friend Christian experienced a death in his family. His aunt, who lived in Mexico, had passed. And while he was a US citizen, his parents were both undocumented and therefore would not be able to travel with him to Mexico. While he was away, I decided to visit his mother and bring her some flowers as we were both in Los Angeles and as a sign of my condolences. Once I got there, I was greeted by his family with an exorbitant amount of kisses and hugs, and they immediately took me to his room, which was all the way in the back of their house. Every inch of that wall was covered with achievement awards and awkward school photos, and of course, a framed Georgetown acceptance letter. The whole time, his mother was holding my hand and petting it as if it were her own son's. Later, we got to the kitchen table and we talked there for an hour, reliving their life in Boyle Heights, talking about how excited she felt when he was first accepted to Georgetown, but mostly mourning the passing of her sister across a hostile border that stretched for hundreds and hundreds of miles. And in her, I saw my own mother. I saw the way my mother glances at her screen when she can only visit her father's grave through a video call. I saw the way my mother's heart skips a beat when she receives a call from Korea. And I saw myself, and I saw the millions of other undocumented immigrants here in the US hoping to travel back to their home one day to be with their families and to touch them again. And this was one of those moments where I wanted everything around me to stop, just all the noise. I wanted it to be silent, and I wanted to just hold one another and to understand what that grip meant. But that grip, in its very essence, that grip means that we must keep going, that the fight needs to continue. And this grip isn't just exclusive to the undocumented movement whatsoever. It applies to every single social movement at every single intersection. This very grip means, and it reminds us, that no human is illegal, that a woman has a right to choose, that love always wins, and that Black lives matter. This grip reminds us to keep going when times are tough. Throughout my college experience, I've had the privilege to witness some of the most incredible formations and continuations of social movements. Now, while all these movements are different in both scope and in subject, one thing they have in common is that they're rooted in elements of empowerment, of acceptance, and of embrace. The great feminist Maya Angelou once said, "I am a woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me." This uplifted women. This made them feel dignified in their own skin. It empowered them. They accepted their womanhood and they embraced it. And it was effective. It was effective for the intersectional feminist movement because it made them feel good. Now, this is an effective strategy for most of the social movements, but it really doesn't work for the undocumented movement for reasons that are quite obvious. The very essence of our existence is weighed down by an abiding burden to keep our identities hidden. Any additional attention brought to our existence could mean deportation, and this fear underwrites our every move, our every word, and our every thought. Now, I was this way for a very long time. I kept my identity hidden for reasons that are pretty obvious. I wanted protection for myself and for my parents, but largely because these were my reflexes. I didn't know how else to live. I was naturally afraid of airports. I was naturally afraid of police, and that's just how it was going to be. So today, when I try to identify the very tipping point of my life, I look past the moment when my 2-year-old self took those first tottering steps onto the plane that would later land me in Los Angeles, my home. I look past the moment when I pressed my fingerprint upon the machine to finally receive defer action. And I look past the moment when my family's visa expired and we first became labeled as illegal aliens. Except I look to the moment when I grew tall enough within myself and within my own identity to stand and proudly call this country my home. I look to the moment when I rejected a system that regards legality over morality, and I affirmed every single one of the sacrifices that my mother made. I look to the moment when I embraced, I accepted, and I empowered an element of my identity I had deemed so shameful. And my voice grew loud enough to stand in Gaston Hall and fill it with the stories of my own and my undocumented peers. And that's the tipping point of my life, and that's the very tipping point of the movement. Now, in every language, there are words that are simply untranslatable into English. It embodies the culture and its nuances. In Korean, there's a word called han. Han is an element of collective suffering. It means that it's a collective hardship. It's roughly translated, but it's untranslatable in English. There's another word called 정. 정 is a feeling of complex love, laced with feelings of affection and compassion and community. Now, ironically enough, there's a saying, an old Korean saying that connects the two. 정이 많으면 한이 많다. We are filled with han because we are filled with 정. Humans are inclined to love and affection, and therefore we are inclined to collective suffering. The undocumented movement embraces the saying fully. It captures the essence of it. We are inclined to collective suffering because we are filled with compassion and love, and we are fighting for togetherness. Today, I shared my feelings of han and my stories of 정 with you, and I urge you to share my secret with the world. I'm undocumented and unafraid. Thank you very much. Thank you.